When something is out of sight, it is often out of mind, leaving no compelling reason for action. Though the waters may look perfectly serene from the outside, deep down, they're deteriorating slowly.
The Westport River watershed is actually the second largest contributing area of land to Buzzards Bay. So the contributing watershed, the two branches of the Westport River drain about 18% of all land that ends up in Buzzards Bay. So when folks ask what's important about Westport in the context of Buzzards Bay, I said, well, if we're not looking out for and taking care of a fifth of the land area that drains around Buzzards Bay, you're never going to save Buzzards Bay without Westport.
The river is part of the history of Westport, and not just for its geography, but because it has shaped the community since its youngest days. The Devil's Pocket Hole, as Westport Harbor is known, was coined by the British. The height of the dunes behind Horseneck Beach is like a curtain, obscuring any view of the waters behind and hiding the harbor itself from vessels offshore. The unique geography made it nearly impossible for Coast Guard boats to trail when rum runners navigated swiftly through the narrow inlet between sandbars and out of view. Countless residents were involved in rum running during the Prohibition age. The east and west branches of the Westport River enabled countless landing sites where liquor could be offloaded and transported on dark country roads to customers at speakeasies as far as Boston and Providence, Rhode Island. Tributaries to the river were used to power mills in the earliest settlements such as grist and lumber. Cranberry vines, beach plums, and other agriculture prospered in this watershed. Farming was a bedrock occupation of this community, along with the obvious maritime-related industries, lobstering, fishing, shellfishing, and crabbing. Westport Point became a successful whaling and shipbuilding community during the height of that era. Most recently, residential development, tourism, and recreation share the river with fishermen, stressing the ecosystem beyond its limits. Today, the big secret is not about illegal moonshine or the hidden harbor, but what lies beneath its beautiful surface, eating away at essential marshland at an ever-increasing rate.
This is a commercial fishing community. My father was a commercial fisherman. I was a commercial fisherman for about 10 years until I took over the harbor master and shellfish departments here in town. We're standing down here at the 88 State Boat Ramp where anybody can come and launch their boat and for $5 go out and have a great time on the river. We went and planted 62 bushels of quahogs that were dredged out of the Taunton River. We pay about $20 a bushel for a contaminated quahog. And we then take them to Westport and we go to a site that's been marked out by the Division of Marine Fisheries and we plant them. We'd like them to stay in the water for a year so we can get a natural spawn and give them plenty of time to clean out. But once we've left them in the water for a year, the commercial shell fishermen can dig these quahogs and they're able to sell them for $100. And these are for the people of Westport.
Yeah, look at all the moss. Yeah. That's all that algae that died this summer. The green algae.
Nitrogen and phosphorus are nutrients that exist naturally in the aquatic ecosystem. They support growth of algae and aquatic plants, which provide food and habitat for fish, shellfish, and smaller organisms living in the water. Human activities such as farming and agriculture, which utilize fertilizers and produce volumes of waste, as well as home lawn care, faulty septic systems become sources of excess nutrients, which are carried by groundwater runoff. Ultimately, adding excess nutrients back into the water creates an unhealthy imbalance. When too much nitrogen and phosphorus enter the river, it causes algae to grow faster than the ecosystem can handle, which results in algae blooms. This, in turn, reduces the oxygen in the water, resulting in dead zones. This leads to fish illness and even death in large numbers. Increasing deterioration can become harmful to humans. Bacterial spikes make people sick when they come in contact with contaminated fish or shellfish.
All the septic system growth that you see in Westport, every house in Westport that is built on a septic system, which is nearly all of them, contributes nitrogen to the river. So what happens is nitrogen comes out of the house, into the septic tank, into the leach field, goes into the ground, and then groundwater is constantly moving towards the coast. So you put it into the ground, everybody thinks it's gone. There's no pipe discharging ugly pollution around, nobody sees it. And that's part of the problem with dealing with this nitrogen problem is nobody sees it. The total maximum daily load of nitrogen that the Westport rivers can take without being harmed. That's what a TMDL is under the Federal Clean Water Act. The TMDL limit for Westport calls for a 71% reduction in the amount of septic system nitrogen pollution. So we've got to somehow get at 71% of the nitrogen that's coming out of septic systems.
I noticed a deterioration in regeneration of the shellfish. You just didn't, we used to, probably once a year or every other year at the most, there'd be a big replenishment of spat spawning. And now we see almost none of it. So the shellfish were almost all harvesting artificially produced as far as hatcheries or relay. And I attribute that to probably nitrogen as much as anything else, but there's so many variables that I don't know. I think it's invisible and it's insidious, and because it's never been kept track of, we're seeing the extremes of what it does, and we see marshes dying, perfect marsh just about 3/4 gone.
There is a very dramatic decline in salt marsh area happening around Buzzards Bay, but also in the Westport River, very pronounced. So a couple of years ago, we took a close look at 6 salt marsh islands in the west branch of the Westport River to track their changes over time. And so in the past 50 years, salt marsh area on the islands of the West Branch declined by 50%. What's bad about that is the curve is actually accelerating curve. So if you carry the same projections forward, all of the remaining salt marsh islands in the Westport River could start disappearing as soon as 15 years from now.
Now as you come along, there's that little indent. You can see it's all dying there. You see the whole shelf is dropped like a foot. And this here with no grass, and that's dead. And now it's just mud and sand. Big chunk just fell off the edge. And this is shrinking back probably at a rate of, 8-10 foot a year, it seems now. It's just being slowly chewed away at.
Bay or Westport River without salt marshes would be a very different place. It would be a much less biodiverse, a much less healthy environment. Salt marshes are not an optional component for an estuary like the Westport River. They're fundamental. And so we have to figure out a way to save as many of these salt marshes as we can.
See the discoloration, and the blades are much bigger. That's the algae.
One of the best things about our part of the world is that so many decisions about land use and pollution and environmental quality happen at town hall. It doesn't happen in Boston or Washington. It happens right up every Tuesday, Wednesday night at Westport Town Hall by a group of citizens who get together to make decisions about wetlands, about planning, and about Board of Health. I always tell people the number one thing you can do if you're here and you're living in Westport, get involved in town government. We manage 27 individual water testing sites on the river. We do that in partnership with the Westport River Watershed Alliance. Every week, volunteers go out, like every week, every 5 days actually, go out to sample water quality. It is how we know what's happening in the river. It's how we know what parts are in decline, where we have seen some improvements. So the science that we collect with this is absolutely critical. We're always looking for more volunteers for water quality monitoring. And if you're a homeowner, I'd want you to start thinking about the upgrade of your septic system as you think about improvements to your house. So everybody's got a plan for their house over the long term, and getting your septic system upgraded to remove the pollution. Everybody's in Westport partially because of the wondrous and the great environment. So start thinking about your septic system as a way to contribute to that right at your own house.
Every day that passes with new construction and daily life adding nitrogen and phosphorus loads, the river and many like it across the country and around the globe are at risk. For many other ecosystems, it's already too late. Westport Harbor, its beautiful river, and the surrounding watershed can be saved, but only if we act now to reverse the trend of deterioration. Nature is resilient. Given the chance, it will bounce back and flourish if we minimize and eliminate the detrimental problems.